She called me the maid in front of her parents, in my own kitchen, after I'd spent the entire day cooking for their dinner. And my son? He laughed. That was the moment I realized I wasn't part of their family anymore. I was just the help. I'm Margaret. I gave them everything. My house, my savings, my time. But that night, I handed her the keys and said, "Good luck paying the mortgage now." And I walked away. Have you ever reached a breaking point so quiet it sounded like freedom? Tell me, what would you have done if your own child stood by while you were humiliated in your home? I seasoned the roast that morning, just like I always had on Sundays. The meat had marinated overnight in olive oil, garlic, rosemary, exactly the way Olivia liked it. I set the table with the good napkins. The linen ones I kept folded in the sideboard. I ironed them too. Polished the wine glasses until they caught the kitchen light like cut diamonds. I even wiped down the baseboards. No one asked me to, but I did it anyway. It was supposed to be a small gathering, or so Ethan had mentioned in passing, but something about the way he said it, casual, quick, already halfway out the door, made my gut tighten. When I walked through the living room, I paused at the mantel. A photo of Ethan, age 22, smiled back at me in cap and gown. I remember the heat that day. My dress had stuck to my back, and I'd cried through half the ceremony, not that anyone noticed. I had mortgaged everything I had to put him through school. That smile in the photo had cost me every savings bond I'd ever tucked away. By 5 o'clock, the house buzzed with activity. Jazz music floated through the open concept downstairs, soft and elegant. The smell of roast chicken filled the air, herb-crisped and slow-cooked. The table gleamed under the chandelier. Olivia floated through the kitchen in one of those dresses that clung like a magazine cover. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor as she arranged place cards. Yes, she had made place cards for a casual dinner. That was when I realized there was no place card for me. I stood in the doorway for a moment, blinking. Maybe she'd forgotten. Maybe I was just helping tonight, like a caterer, like staff. I bit my tongue and turned toward the basement. They'd asked for the special wine, the one we saved for holidays. So I went downstairs, the cool air wrapping around me as I scanned the dusty shelves for the Merlot. When I came back up, Olivia's parents had arrived. Her mother wore pearls and perfume so strong I could smell it from the staircase. Her father laughed too loudly at his own jokes. Ethan was pouring drinks. Olivia beamed like she was running for office. I stepped into the room, bottle in hand, just in time to hear her mother ask, "And who's this?" Her tone was half curious, half condescending, like someone pointing out an unexpected stain on a white tablecloth. Olivia didn't miss a beat. She threw her head back and laughed, light and theatrical. "Oh," she said, waving toward me, "that's Margaret, our unofficial maid, keeps the house running." The room erupted in polite chuckles. Someone even clapped. I felt the bottle in my hand grow heavier. Ethan didn't say a word. He didn't even look at me. I stood there, still. For one long moment, I thought maybe he'd speak up. Say, "That's my mother." Say anything. But the only sound was the clink of forks and the low hum of Miles Davis in the background. So I smiled. Not because I was okay, but because it was the only thing I had left to do. I walked over, set the wine bottle gently on the counter, and turned away. My hands trembled just slightly, so I tucked them into my sleeves as I left the room. No one followed me. No one called after me. I climbed the stairs slowly, the sound of laughter growing fainter with each step. In my bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed, the same bed I'd bought when Ethan was still in high school. The comforter was faded but familiar. My hands rested in my lap as I stared at the door across the hallway, the one Ethan used to slam shut during his teenage tantrums. I used to wait outside that door, a plate of food balanced on my knees, just in case he got hungry enough to forgive me. Now I wasn't even worthy of a place card. Downstairs, another burst of laughter echoed, followed by the pop of a wine cork. I closed my eyes, trying to breathe past the lump in my throat. The roast I had prepared would be carved without me. The glasses I had shined would clink in celebration, none of which had anything to do with me. I got up, crossed the room, opened the top drawer of the dresser. Inside was a small leather pouch holding every key in the house. Front door, back door, garage, mailbox. I ran my fingers over the cool metal. Each one had a history, a purpose. They had once been symbols of trust, access, belonging. Now they just felt heavy. I stood there for a while, staring down at them, my breath shallow. The music downstairs shifted to something lighter, a piano number I couldn't name. I listened to Olivia's voice rise in polished praise, talking about real estate markets and brunch menus and something about networking with influencers. My son laughed again, the kind of laugh that used to be reserved for me back when we still shared the same jokes. If I disappeared tonight, would anyone even notice the silence? I didn't know yet, but I was beginning to suspect the answer, and maybe, just maybe, it was time they found out. The kitchen was bathed in a sleepy kind of light, that early morning kind, the kind that slips in between half-closed blinds and makes everything look gentler than it really is. I moved on autopilot, opened the pantry, pulled down the coffee tin, scooped the grounds. The old machine sputtered as it warmed up, gurgling low like it was waking from a bad dream. I reached for my favorite mug, the one with the faded blue rim, and set it down. But I didn't pour the coffee. Instead, I stood and watched it fill the pot. My mother used to say, "Sometimes love is just labor that nobody thanks you for." I didn't understand it as a child, not really. But that morning, as the scent of coffee curled through the quiet, I knew exactly what she meant. The house was still mostly silent. I heard the upstairs shower running, then the bathroom fan. The cat padded in from the hallway, tail flicking like a pendulum. I bent down to fill her bowl. She purred for a second before digging in. Olivia didn't like the cat, said she shed too much, but she posed with her on Instagram, called her our fur baby. That always made me laugh, quietly. The moment I heard Olivia's footsteps coming down the stairs, I reached for the drawer beside the fridge. The keys were already there, arranged in a neat little line, one for each lock. I picked them up and held them in my palm. Cold, weighty. Olivia entered, barely glancing up from her phone. She wore leggings and one of those sleeveless hoodies that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. A yoga mat hung over one shoulder. Her thumbs danced across the screen. She walked past me without saying a word. I waited. She finally looked up, sensing something in my stillness. Her brow pinched slightly, just enough to notice. "Morning," she muttered, half distracted. I didn't reply. I simply reached out and placed the keys in her manicured hand. She blinked. "What's this?" I met her eyes, calm and level. Good luck paying the mortgage now. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't have a snappy comeback. Her lips parted, then closed again. Her phone lowered, dangling uselessly in her hand. "Wait, what?" I turned away. No yelling, no explanations, just movement. I walked down the hall, past the photos I had framed, the furniture I had chosen, the baseboards I had scrubbed yesterday. My purse sat by the door, ready. My coat, the same one I wore when I brought Ethan home from the hospital, was already draped over my arm. I didn't look back. Outside, the air was crisp with early spring. A breeze tugged at the hem of my coat as I stepped onto the porch. The wind carried the scent of blooming jasmine and freshly cut grass. The street was quiet, save for the distant bark of a dog and the faint whir of a lawnmower starting somewhere down the block. The front door swung open behind me. "Mom!" It was Ethan's voice. Raw, alarmed. I didn't turn around. "Mom, wait! Where are you going?" Barefoot, he stumbled onto the driveway, jeans unbuttoned, t-shirt wrinkled like he had just pulled it from the floor. He looked younger than he was, confused, as if waking into someone else's nightmare. I opened the car door. He reached the end of the steps. "Can we talk? Just talk, please." I placed my bag in the passenger seat. "Is this about last night?" he asked. Come on, it was a joke. Olivia didn't mean it. You're being sensitive. I paused, one hand on the car door. The wind caught my hair and tossed it across my face. I tucked it back gently. You stood there, I said, voice quiet but clear. You didn't say a word. He looked stunned. I didn't think... No, I said, meeting his eyes for the first time. You didn't. He stepped closer, his feet cold on the pavement. Can we just go inside? Please? I shook my head. There's nothing left inside for me. His mouth opened, but no sound came. I slipped into the driver's seat, adjusted the mirror, gripped the wheel like it was the only solid thing left in my life. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently. Because it wasn't rage. It was clarity. Clarity is quiet. It doesn't scream. It doesn't accuse. It just settles in your bones like the truth you always knew, but were too afraid to name. I reversed out of the driveway. Ethan stood frozen on the lawn, watching me go. I didn't wave. At the end of the street, I paused at the stop sign. My heart thudded, not with regret, but with something else. Relief, maybe. Or the first breath after a long time underwater. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew where I would never return. When your presence becomes background noise and your absence becomes a disruption, that's when you realize you were never invisible. You were just ignored, and now I was choosing to be heard, even in silence. The apartment smelled like time. Old wallpaper, cracked wood, and stories waiting to resurface. Everything creaked. The windows when the wind brushed them, the heater when it groaned to life, even the floorboards as I moved across them in thick socks. It wasn't grand, not even cozy, but it was mine, quiet, unbothered. A space untouched by the voices that used to echo off the granite countertops and marble floors I'd cleaned for someone else. Most evenings I drifted from room to room without purpose, just movement. I straightened the throw blanket, folded old dish towels, sat in the same chair I had the night before. My bag remained unpacked, the cabinets mostly bare. I'd been living off peanut butter sandwiches and instant oatmeal, not because I couldn't do better, but because I didn't care to. On the third afternoon, with clouds pressing down through the windows and the rain threatening to fall, I found myself standing in front of the narrow hallway closet. I hadn't opened it since arriving. Something about it felt too intimate, like a door to a memory I wasn't sure I was ready to meet, but I turned the knob anyway. Dust danced in the air as I opened the door. An old mop leaned against one wall. Boxes of thread and fabric lined the shelves. A sewing machine sat tucked into the corner, its cover yellowed with age. And then, at the very back, half hidden beneath a stack of linens, I saw it. A rusted metal trunk, heavy, square, and locked, with nothing but a simple latch. My breath hitched. I recognized it. Ruth used to keep it under her sewing table. She never opened it when I was around, said it held family things, but the way she said it always made me think it held something else, something heavier. I dragged the trunk into the living room, set it down near the window where the light was best. My knees cracked as I sat beside it. The latch gave way with a loud click, followed by a groan from the hinges. Inside, I expected buttons or old baby clothes, maybe letters, photos. Instead, I found manila folders, dozens, all carefully labeled. One stood out immediately, thicker, wrapped in twine and marked with my full name in Ruth's handwriting. I stared at it for a long moment before touching it. The weight of it in my hands told me it wasn't sentimental. It was factual, cold. I untied the string, fingers trembling. Inside were hospital intake forms, medical charts, a birth certificate, and a letter. My name was there, Margaret Walker. Date, the day Ethan was born, but alongside it, in a different file, was another name, Michael Jameson. Same birth date, same hospital, same hour. A photo slid from the stack, a newborn swaddled tightly in a hospital-issued blanket. Big eyes, dark hair. It wasn't Ethan. I knew it instantly. Not just in my mind, but in my bones. My breath grew shallow. I flipped back to the letter, unfolded it carefully. The paper had yellowed, but the ink was still bold. Ruth's handwriting was unmistakable. "If you're reading this, it means you've come back, and I'm sorry you had to. I should have told you while I was alive, but I was afraid that it would break you, or worse, that you'd never believe me." I read the letter twice, 3 times. I traced her words with my fingers, looking for doubt, for misdirection, but the truth was clear. Ruth had been a nurse. The night Ethan was born, a last-minute room reassignment had caused confusion in the nursery. 2 babies, switched tags. She'd noticed something off, raised questions, but the hospital dismissed it, said all was fine. By the time she pushed harder, it was too late. The infants had already gone home. Years later, she found a document buried in old files, a quiet settlement from the hospital to another family, a name she remembered, Jameson. And that's when the pieces fell into place. Ethan wasn't my son, at least not by blood. I leaned back against the wall, the folder spread across my lap. The heater kicked on, rattling softly behind me. Somewhere in the apartment above, someone dropped something heavy and it thudded like a door slamming shut. But I didn't move. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was still. And strangely, I didn't feel betrayed. I felt free. Because suddenly, all the things that hadn't made sense, the distance, the indifference, the coldness I'd always blamed myself for, they fell into place like dominoes, the way Ethan had never really looked at me, the way I had always reached, and he had never reached back. Maybe it wasn't me. Maybe it never had been. I wasn't angry, not yet. I wasn't even sure what to feel. But the one thing I knew, the one thing that rooted itself deep in my chest, was that I hadn't imagined the emptiness. It had always been real. I picked up the photo again. Michael Jameson. His name felt foreign and familiar all at once. I shuffled through the rest of the documents, medical notes, birth records, even a blurry scan of a DNA result. Ruth had done everything. She had investigated, cross-checked, compiled the proof, and then she had hidden it, to protect me, or to protect herself. I didn't blame her. I sat there until the light dimmed, until the edges of the pages became hard to read. Michael Jameson, a man who looked just like his parents, and nothing like me. And if Ethan wasn't mine, if that tie never existed, then who had I been for the last 30 years? And who was I now? They laughed at me like I was furniture, but furniture doesn't hold the deed. The week after I found Ruth's letter, I didn't cry. I didn't spiral. I made appointments. I made copies. I made coffee and drank it slowly, alone, at the small table in my inherited apartment. The same table where Ruth used to mend dresses, pay bills, and sort laundry with quiet hands and tired eyes. It was a Tuesday when I walked into the law office. The air smelled like cold printer ink and lemon floor cleaner. A clock ticked somewhere behind the receptionist's desk, a dull reminder that everything, eventually, runs out of time. Lisa Benton looked exactly like the kind of woman you want to represent you. Wire-rimmed glasses, blunt haircut, voice like a scalpel. She shook my hand with intention. "You're Margaret Walker?" she asked. "I am." She gestured toward her office. "Come in. Let's talk about the house." I sat across from her at a broad oak desk, surrounded by neatly stacked case files and a window with a view of the parking lot. Her legal assistant, Darla, brought us tea. Mint for me, black for Lisa. "I reviewed your paperwork," Lisa began. "Titles in your name. No co-signers? No legal transfers? You have full authority to list or sell." I nodded. "They live there, but they don't own it." Lisa tilted her head. "And they don't pay the mortgage?" "Never have." She scribbled something on a yellow pad. "Why now?" I paused. Let the silence stretch. "Because I finally see them for who they are," I said. I handed her a folder, proof of Olivia's financial deception, screenshots of falsified invoices, listings of staged events, a fake client testimonial that used a stock photo woman I'd seen on a billboard. I'd tracked it all, quietly, carefully. Lisa flipped through the pages. "This isn't just unethical. It's borderline fraud." "I'm not interested in revenge," I said. "Just clarity." Her lips curved. "You're getting both." Darla returned with a new file, motion papers to initiate the listing. Lisa passed them to me. I picked up the pen. Signed. It was done. That evening, I walked by the house. My house. The porch light was on. Olivia sat on the swing, wine glass in hand, scrolling through her phone. Inside, Ethan was sprawled on the couch, the television casting soft flashes across his face. They looked like a picture, but it wasn't real. It never had been. They had told the world they were building a home. But I had built the house, and now I was taking it back. The next day, I printed everything, not just for the lawyer, but for Olivia's parents. I'd never forgotten the way they looked at me that night at the dinner table, curious, amused, as if I were a harmless background prop in their daughter's perfect life. I mailed the packet anonymously. No return address, no letter, just a single note on top. Everything you think you know is a performance. 2 days later, Olivia's Instagram went quiet. No stories, no photos, just one inspirational quote about resilience and being misunderstood. It gathered fewer likes than usual. The comments were vague, some questioning. One from her mother. "We need to talk. Now." And I didn't flinch. That same week, I went to the bookstore. Michael was there. He stood behind the counter wearing a cardigan and sorting through a stack of poetry books. The shop smelled like cedar and roasted coffee. I didn't say much, just bought a novel and handed him cash. He smiled. "Great choice." I nodded. "You own this place?" "Sort of," he said. "My parents helped me get started. Now I run it myself." I smiled back, said nothing more. Our hands brushed when he gave me my change, just briefly, but the contact was enough to make my throat tighten. I left without lingering. It wasn't time. Not yet. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and listened to the wind whip through the alley. The heater rattled in the corner like it always did. I opened my journal and wrote down everything, not just about Michael, about the house, the signatures, the plan. And when I finished, I closed the book and whispered to no one. I wasn't erasing them. I was erasing the version of me that tolerated them. They had never built anything. They had just moved in and assumed ownership of the house, of my labor, of my silence. But silence is a funny thing. People think it's weakness. But when you've carried it long enough, it sharpens, it focuses, it becomes a blade. The next morning, Lisa called. "The notice has been delivered," she said. "They'll know by now." I thanked her, hung up. My phone lit up seconds later, Ethan's name flashing on the screen. I let it ring. Then again, Olivia. Voicemail. Again, Ethan. I stared at the phone, then turned it face down. I didn't flinch. If silence is a weapon, why does it feel so clean in my hands? I didn't have answers, but I knew I was finally holding something real. He handed me a poetry book. I handed him a truth that would rewrite his life. It was late afternoon. The sun cast golden streaks across the wooden floor of the bookstore, sliding between the tall shelves like it belonged there. Michael stood at the counter sorting paperbacks with quiet precision, his glasses perched on the bridge of his nose. I had been in the store a dozen times by then, browsing, buying books I sometimes didn't even read. Each visit chipped away at the fear, slowly softening the sharp edge of the truth I carried. That day I didn't pretend. "Can we talk?" I asked. He looked up, not surprised, just open. "Of course. Come on back." He led me to the small break room behind the store. A worn couch sat under a lamp that gave off a gentle amber glow. The kettle on the counter hissed faintly. Peppermint tea steeped in 2 mugs, its scent curling in the air like a breath. We sat. I didn't waste time. I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope, the one that held Ruth's letter, the hospital records, the photo of the baby who wasn't Ethan. My hands shook just slightly as I placed it on the table between us. "What's this?" he asked. I looked at him for a long moment. Something that changed everything for me, and might change everything for you. He didn't move right away. He stared at the envelope, as if waiting for it to explain itself. "Do you remember?" I said softly, "telling me once that I seemed familiar?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, like a memory I don't have." I gave a sad smile. "You weren't wrong." He opened the envelope, pulled out the documents one by one. Ruth's letter was on top. He read it first, eyes scanning quickly, then more slowly. His face didn't change much, but his fingers tightened slightly around the pages. Then came the medical files, the DNA report, the photocopied birth certificate, the photograph of the newborn. He stared at it for a long time. "This is real?" he asked, voice low. "Yes. And you're saying, I'm saying," I said carefully, "that when I gave birth 32 years ago, the hospital gave me the wrong child. They gave me Ethan, and your parents unknowingly took you home." His brow furrowed. He looked away for a moment, then back at me. "I have parents. I love them. I'm not here to take that from you." He set the papers down, rubbed the bridge of his nose. "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel right now." "You don't have to feel anything," I said. "I didn't come here to demand space in your life. I just couldn't carry it alone anymore." He looked at me again. His gaze was soft but heavy. "How long have you known?" "A few weeks. My aunt left it all in a trunk under the floorboards. She was a nurse at the hospital that night. She suspected for years but never told me, until after she passed." "And the other son?" he asked. "Ethan," I said. "I raised him. I loved him. But he never really loved me back." Michael nodded slowly. His hands were still. "That must have been hard." "It was," I said. "But this is harder. Because you didn't ask for any of this. You didn't deserve to be the answer to a question I didn't even know I was asking." The silence between us stretched, but it wasn't heavy. Just full, like we were both waiting to breathe again. He reached for his tea, sipped it slowly. "You know," he said after a while, "I always felt like something was slightly off. Not wrong, just like a puzzle piece turned upside down." I swallowed. "I'm not asking for anything," I repeated. "I just wanted you to know." He looked at me then, really looked, not as a customer, not as a stranger, but as something undefined, in between. "I don't know what this means," he said. "I don't know what to call it, but can we take this slow?" Tears stung at the corners of my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. "That's more than I hoped for." We sat in silence for a long while, sipped our tea. The lamp hummed faintly. A clock ticked above the door, marking time we couldn't get back and didn't need to. He didn't call me Mom. He didn't have to. He didn't look away. When I left, I felt lighter. Not healed, not whole, but lighter. The next morning, I came back to the store just after opening. Michael was at the front arranging a new display. We didn't say much, but tucked inside the book I had bought the day before was a small card. Plain, cream-colored, his handwriting neat. "Thank you for trusting me." I pressed it to my chest and closed my eyes. Can love begin where memory never lived? I didn't know yet, but I was beginning to believe it could. The key he gave me didn't open a house. It opened something far rarer, belonging. Michael handed it to me one morning, wrapped in a small cloth pouch. We were standing near the back wall of the bookstore, where a new wooden sign had just been installed above an arched doorway. "The next chapter." "What is this?" I asked. He looked at me, serious and calm. "A space," he said, "for people who have stories and know where to tell them, for people like us." I turned the key in my hand. It was small, brass, warm from his pocket. "And you want me to open it?" "I want you to have it," he said. When I unlocked the door, the scent of new wood and old pages spilled out. Inside was a reading room, soft chairs, bookshelves already half filled, a tea kettle on a corner table. The light from the tall windows lit the room like a chapel. It didn't feel like a business. It felt like grace. I stood in the center of it all and whispered, "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Michael replied. "You've already said enough." Later that week, I finalized the donation. A portion of the money from the house sale, my house, went to a local foundation that helped women start over. Women like me. Women who had been erased in their own homes, laughed at in rooms they had built, discarded when their usefulness ran out. The call from the foundation director came 2 days later. She wanted to thank me, ask if I'd share my story. I said maybe. Not yet. Some stories needed to live quietly before they learned how to be heard. When the text from Ethan came, I didn't ignore it. It simply read, "Can we meet?" We agreed on a park halfway between his apartment and my new place. Neutral ground. A playground stood empty nearby, and the air was beginning to carry the scent of fall. The wind tugged leaves loose as we sat on opposite ends of a worn bench. He looked older. Not tired exactly, just thinner. Diminished in a way that had nothing to do with age. "I've lost everything," he said after a while. I didn't reply. He shifted. "I know I don't deserve to ask, but am I nothing to you now?" I turned to him, looked directly into the eyes I had once memorized as a baby. "You were never taken from me, Ethan. You just stopped choosing me." His throat worked as he swallowed. "I thought I was protecting Olivia. You thought I would always be there," I finished for him. He nodded. The leaves kept falling. "I don't know how to fix this," he said. "I'm not asking you to." A beat passed. "So, what now?" I inhaled deeply, let the air fill the spaces that once ached with silence. "Now I tell the truth," I said. "To you, to myself. I'm not your maid. I'm not even your mother, not by blood. But I was something rarer than both. I was a woman who gave everything. And now I'm a woman who chooses herself." He didn't respond, just looked at me, then at his hands, then at the ground. I stood. "I don't hate you, Ethan, but I won't shrink for you anymore." He nodded slowly. "I understand." I walked away. He didn't follow. Back at the bookstore, I opened the door to the next chapter. The lamps were on. A few patrons sat reading quietly, a pot of tea steaming nearby. Michael was organizing a new display near the front. He smiled when he saw me, said nothing, just handed me a clipboard with a schedule of upcoming events: community reading nights, women's writing circles, story hours for children. I took a seat in the armchair by the window, picked up a book, let the quiet wrap around me like a new skin. Outside, the sky shifted toward dusk, and I smiled because I wasn't rebuilding the past. I was writing something entirely new. What if the happiest chapter of your life isn't a return, but a rewrite? As I turned the key to the next chapter, I didn't just open a room. I opened a new version of myself. For the first time in years, I belong somewhere I didn't have to earn my place. I've learned that silence isn't peace when it comes at the cost of your dignity. No one has the right to make you invisible, not even those you love. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. If you've ever felt unseen at your own dinner table, your voice matters. Share your story. Let's remind each other that it's never too late to begin again.